Hey. Okay. I just got back from the library. I was gonna film this in the parking lot, but there was a man in the car next to me eating his lunch, and I did not feel like being the entertainment for his meal. But I got 2 books. Both I've been excited to read for a very long time. This one I don't know as much about. I've never read Vincent Cunningham before. But every time I go to a bookstore, I just gravitate towards this, and I've read the first few pages, and I like the writing, and I don't know, I don't know much beyond that. Like, literally a year ago, I read the first few pages and knew I wanted to read it, and here we are. God, libraries are so cool! Like, what do you mean I get to take this home and read it for free? I think, like, a lot of people, at least I've noticed this year, a lot of people are doing the book buying ban. No buying book year. No book buying year. You know what I mean. Anyway, I am also doing that. I am not buying books this year. And it's been a great experiment because I've learned about libraries. Just kidding. I've been to the library before. This is the year that I've truly come to appreciate it. I think it's been healthy for me to not indulge my need for instant satisfaction, and at the same time, this is more satisfying. Yeah, I'm just really stoked to have this, and to have Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. I know he's kind of a controversial author. I don't know the full extent of whatever he's said and done, but my problem is that I just really, really love his writing, and I love the stories that he tells, which usually center around a domestic setting, and I don't know, I love the way he writes dialogue between characters, and I feel like he's a smart writer. So maybe I'm problematic, but I've read everything that's come before this, I think. So I have to keep going. So really excited for that. I don't know where to start. Probably with the shorter one. I just graduated from my master's program. I'm just so excited to be able to now start reading more for pleasure again. So it's not, there's no like cohesive theme to this video maybe, except that I'm in a place I love and I'm reading books that I hope and think I will love. And that's good enough for me. I don't know about you, but it sounds like fun. I talk about the book so far, Great Expectations. I'm like almost 100 pages in, that we could bake some cookies. And when I say make some cookies, I mean roll out pre-made dough and stick it in the oven. But that's about as much as I can do if I'm gonna try to like talk and collect my thoughts about this book. Okay, just a reminder, this is what we're reading. And just first off, let me say it's really, really good. It's so good. The writing throughout is as great as I expected it to be based on those first few pages that I read, you know, like a year ago. This is so not the season for this cookie dough, but we have had it since last fall. It's pumpkin white chocolate chip, and it expires in like a month, so it's time. Let's do it. Get a baking pan. Oh, I gotta heat the oven first. See, if I were trying to cook something more complicated, this would be impossible. Oh, by the way, if you know, you know. I'm a big fan, but my brother's an even bigger fan, and I got this for him for his birthday. Okay, $3.50. All right, and a pan. Okay, so what is this book about? I knew it was like auto-fictional. I knew that it was going to be somewhat about the 2008 Obama campaign. I did not know how closely it would follow that campaign. Like, the author, Vincent Cunningham, did work on that campaign. This is about his experience working in the Obama campaign as a fundraiser, so a lot of things that are thrown in there. There's just lots of little details that it's autofiction, so you never know for sure what's true or what's not, but I believe it's giving me a good sense of what it was like to be in the middle of that, which in and of itself is fascinating because that was such a historical moment. I did wash my hands already, just so you know. Do we need to grease it? Yes. Butter spray. It's all the way back there. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Our main character, it does take on the name David. He has just dropped out of college because he had a baby with his girlfriend. And he's like 20 years old. He's living back with his mom somewhere in the Upper West Side. It is fun reading about New York now that I know what it's talking about. But yeah, so he's back with his mom. He takes on this tutoring gig, and the mother of the child he's tutoring gets him connected with the campaign. So he starts working as a fundraiser in the campaign office for someone that I'm pretty sure this will continue throughout the whole book, but this Obama character is only referred to as the senator, especially at the beginning when he is only known as the senator from Illinois. And I feel like I should show you this later. I know you're not really getting what's down here very well. Let me change the angle a little bit, so I'll just like come down here. Anyway, so he's working for the senator, or the candidate. The way he describes this candidate, like the first time he saw him on TV, he said that the candidate reminds him a lot of his pastors growing up, and speaks to his audience like they're a congregation, and uses language like at the end of his speeches he'll say "I love you." He's also described as Kennedy-like and handsome and easygoing, good sense of humor, like picture Obama. We're just following him we're following him going to these different fundraising events at like really wealthy people's houses in Manhattan. And one of the interesting things that keeps coming up is like at pretty much each event, that is in a person's home, he's drawn to whatever artwork is there. How there was like this meeting of two different kinds of languages, the language of the senator and the language of the artist. And politics, like what he says is like a formal politics and an aesthetic politics are rubbing up against each other. And that mostly interested me because in my degree I was interested in what language can and cannot do. And even David, the character, he talks about how his interest in art comes from his interest in meaning, but his interest in meaning is he derives meaning from language. And in talking about aesthetics, it just got me thinking about how in politics, where we get our sense of meaning, like a lot of politics for us as individuals is about meaning making, and collectively, what kind of society do we want to live in? What kind of meaning do we want to attribute to our lives and to our society as a whole? And there's a way that both language, like through political rhetoric, can do that. Ta-da! And there's a way that only art can do that. I studied philosophy in my graduate degree, and I started to feel that there were certain levels of meaning that I couldn't access through this analytical frame, through sort of an objective critique, which there's so many critiques of that idea in and of itself, but that I was finding myself more drawn to like fiction and poetry and drama as ways to access meaning, even through language, but in a way that the meaning in the language is conveyed not on the surface, but almost underneath. I mean, you read a poem, and sometimes you're like, I don't know what exactly it's saying, but I'm feeling there's something meaningful about it that is still getting across to me. And I'm even having that experience with this book. Like I'm feeling like I'm absorbing the meaningfulness of this moment of like the campaign through fiction better than I could have by just like a very point by point, here's what happened. So I think this is all kind of obvious stuff, just like what art can do. Anyway, it keeps coming up in this book, and I love that because it's a topic near and dear to my heart. I think there's kind of like a good, healthy, but also maybe overemphasize skepticism of pathos or like emotion or even aesthetics, again, in politics. And we want politics to just operate on logos, like give people the right information and let them make the correct decision based off of that. I think we've seen, like, especially recently, how maybe politics doesn't work that way. And whether we like it or not, the aesthetics or the emotions of a campaign are going to be materially important. Maybe we do need to be skeptical of that still. Like, we don't want someone who looks good and then promises a lot and then what we need to happen doesn't happen. Maybe we need to make a distinction between low emotions and high emotions. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to ramble about politics forever, except this book is about politics. Like, another theme that comes up is David's own Christianity, his own relationship to religion and to the Bible, especially. Like, he references the Bible a lot. At one point, obviously race comes up a lot as well. Here's our like first Black presidential hopeful, and our main character is Black. I should have mentioned that. But back to the Bible, when he references the Bible, he's never being preachy. He's just explaining his own background in order to explain his relationship to politics and his race. And I mean, it's just so much a part of him. He went to a Jesuit middle school, and there's one passage I really like. I'm having camera problems and I don't know why, but I got cut off, so we're just gonna do a photo booth. I'm talking to my cat. Okay, I don't exactly know where I just left off. Ow, claws. The cookies did finish in the interval of me figuring out technical problems. I think I was about to read this passage. Let's hope that's true. Anyway, yeah, talking about his relationship to language and fiction through the way he grew up reading the Bible. He says, I used to read the Bible on anxious nights. I liked the sure, strident, spastic rhythms of the epistles. Those letters seemed so obviously real, only genuine agitation can make a person write like Paul. His wild voice would rock me to sleep, for we know in part and we prophesy in part. Over time, I started to resort to novels on roughly the same grounds. Despite the fakeness of character and plot, my antic, self-soothing style of reading, each paragraph combed quickly but repeatedly at a sweeping diagonal angle, hoping to swallow each chain of thought, gave me the impression, maybe it was an illusion, that I could glimpse past the narration and see the heart, hear the voice of the novelist herself, the real person at the desk, squirming stylishly to be seen. I thought of fiction as a flexible tarp, easy to pierce and asking to be pierced, thrown over an attempt at correspondence. So I loved that for like personal reasons. Like I mentioned, that's just an interest of mine. Language as a tarp that needs to be pierced. The meaning is underneath it. It's hard to capture the world or meaning at the surface of language, and yet there's something underneath it that still can enter us somehow. And this also speaks to how David and Vincent, who wrote the book, he wants to be a writer, and he keeps telling people that he wants to be a writer, but everyone else on the campaign is like, that's cool, but you should really consider going to law school because that'll help you in this sphere of politics. So I'm wondering how, well, I'm not wondering, I know I know how it turns out. He wrote this book, so I'm assuming David's character also will end up being a writer. There's one more part I want to read, but I'm gonna do that while we eat the cookies. They smell great. Look kind of terrible. Wow, they like totally flattened out. I'll show you. Give me 1 second. Okay. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you can tell, but these are really flat. We can pretend they're like lace cookies or whatever, but I don't think these were supposed to turn out this way. And I'm realizing that that, like, just thinking back, what could I have done wrong? I followed the timing directions right. I set there were only 2 things for me to do. Turn on the oven and set the timer. I did those right, I know I did, but leave it to me to think that I had to like smush the dough down. I think I just wanted something to do with my hands while I was talking, but that was totally unnecessary and totally squashed these things. It's like a cracker. Needs milk. Hopefully you can see my head, because I just did this and my head was cut off. Okay, guess we'll just have to eat another cookie. Oh well. Okay, I just wanted to finish off with my musings on one last line. But first, a bite. Okay, they're alright. Definitely screwed up with the squishing down thing, but I love pumpkin and I love white chocolate chip, and They're still cookies. Okay. The line I wanted to finish off on. David says, "One of my lifelong fantasies, often lived out in dreams. I was headed somewhere new under someone else's control." I mean, like, what better description can you have sometimes for our personal motivations about politics? Like, we want someone else to take the reins and responsibility and lead us somewhere better. And there's a good side of that. Like, there's a natural, like, yeah, sure, that's cool. We need to organize some way and we want a better world. And that makes me think of how maybe the title, Great Expectations, might be reminiscent of Obama's Hope campaign. And it's also true, this is referring to Charles Dickens's Great Expectations, which is a coming of age story. And so I think for our character David, I'm wondering how will this campaign live up to his expectations? How did it live up to yours? I think that's a question he's asking a lot of people, is like, there was a lot of hope and promises given, and a lot of that was fulfilled and a lot of it wasn't, because is that politics? Like, what can we expect from a politician? I don't know. And I'm also wondering about David as far as the coming of age story thing goes, because at this moment he's not super like personally invested in this campaign. I mean, he is struck by like the article I read, the review described the candidate as like having a messianic draw, and for David, especially considering his Christian background, that's definitely alluring to him and to a lot of other people. And yet at the same time, he's enjoying his participation in this campaign in a game-like sense. He's not like super opinionated, he's not even super passionate about whatever causes might underlie this campaign. It's more just that he likes developing and honing the skills it requires to make connections and network and solicit donations and stuff. And so I'm wondering if part of the coming of age will be him developing a more personal investment in the campaign, and just what his relationship or what his view of the candidate will go on to be. At this point, it's still very like he's just observing how the candidate is acting and how he feels in the presence of the candidate. Like, he feels himself standing up straighter, and so maybe being involved will help him mature in some ways. So I'm interested to see how that develops, and yeah, I think that's it for now. See you later. only been back in New Mexico for like 5 days, but I'm about to get back on an airplane. This time it's going to be a short trip. I'm going to Santa Barbara for my mother's graduation, which is super fun. Like, both of us graduating with our master's degrees a week apart is very sweet. And I don't anticipate that I'll have a ton of time to film while I'm there. We're only there for 1 full day. But I also anticipate that I'll probably finish the book either on the plane there or on the plane back. So I'm going to try to get some footage. So I guess the next time I see you probably will be in the air. See you there.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final boarding call for Spirit Airlines Flight 22.
Red velvet. But they're done at the bottom. I would do dark chocolate.
Do that or that or
Okay.
yeah. Well, what do you want?
It's scenic.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final boarding call.
Oh, thanks.
I've already seen cupcake forklift.
You want to hold the box?
Oh yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final boarding call
Operation successful.
Airlines Flight 22.
Kind of.
Frosty.
Service to San Diego. All passengers should now be on board through gate A.
Is that all frosting?
Final call.
I hope not. Hope there's some cake in there. Good.
It's chocolate.
Turkish delights.
You take the whole.
Juicy pistachio.
God. It's white.
No, no, it's okay. It's juicy. Okay, it's been like a week since my last update, and I kind of have a lot to go over. First of all, I'm back on photo booth because I'm having a lot of issues with my camera. I have kind of a cheap camera. It's this little Kodak Pix Pro FZ55, I think, and I got it because as a New Year's resolution this year, I got rid of my smartphone. Otherwise, I'd be using that. And that's not to say I have any regrets about that decision. Actually, it's been like one of the best things I've done for myself, maybe ever. But that's probably a discussion for another video. Anyway, I'm still trying to figure out the best replacement system for the things that I have foregone giving up my iPhone, including the camera. That's really been actually the toughest thing, which wouldn't be much of a problem if I hadn't decided now is the time I want to start making YouTube videos. Anyway, sorry for the quality. I think I have figured out the problem. I think it's an SD card problem. So I'll do some research, I'll figure it out. Always a technical difficulty, of course. The other thing I need to mention is that the reason it's been a week is because, okay, I have this thing that I like to consider like Princess and the Pea syndrome, which means that it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to absolutely knock me out for days, for weeks, to just like screw up my brain and body chemistry. This time it was an allergy pill. When I was in Santa Barbara, my allergies were so bad. I've never had seasonal allergies, like at all. I was just getting pummeled by whatever was in the air in Santa Barbara. And I resisted taking an allergy pill at first because I'm like, yeah, this is bad, but with me, I never know if the cure is gonna be worse than the poison. And I gave in, and I was right to be hesitant because, yeah, I was knocked flat for a week. For the first 3 days, it was like, I was just exhausted. I was just in bed, sleeping a lot, tired, couldn't open my eyes. And this was a non-drowsy Claritin, by the way. I just want to put that out there. If it had been a drowsy, like a Benadryl, forget about it. But once the sleepiness wore off, my mood, like my dopamine or whatever, was zapped. It was gone. So I have not read a book or even thought about working on this video since then. I guess it's been like a week and a half, actually. If you have any idea what might be wrong with me and my biology, I invite you to leave a diagnosis in the comments. What is this, a reading review? All right. But in the last few days, I did actually finish the book, and I want to talk about the second half and my overall thoughts on Great Expectations. I'll just start with like plot-wise, what went on. So the second half of the book pretty much continues to just cover David's involvement in this campaign, and a lot of it is just like his personal anecdotes, and some of them worked for me better than others. The ones that didn't, I'll just say that one of them might have been my fault, because one of them was a very, what I would consider kind of drawn out sports metaphor. I will say that Vincent Cunningham, his prose is good enough that it's like, oh, I'll read whatever you write. It's that good. I just enjoy the prose. But for a book this short, that's on a topic that for me is like so meaty, and I really feel like this book could have been twice as long. For that reason, like the basketball metaphor, and then there's almost an entire chapter that kicks off the third part where he's looking at old photographs and he's describing them. And I think just proportionate to how long this book is, those went on for too long. Because there's so many other interesting things that I think could have been talked about. I don't think Vincent Cunningham was running low on material or anything. I kind of think they were probably moments that really did happen to this author, that he wanted to include because they were meaningful to him. And like the basketball part I get, because I get on one level. I get that people really love sports. The level I don't get it is that I'm not that into sports, but I can appreciate that other people are. The drawn out descriptions of the historical photographs, I feel like I might be missing something. Like I kind of stumped as to what it had to do with the themes that we're discussing here. He also goes back in time in his own life when he was younger, as a young child, and like in his teens or his early 20s, and shares a few anecdotes from then. And while I enjoy reading those because I just find him to be an interesting person, and it does provide some context about why he might feel the way he does towards the candidate or the campaign or politics in general, the connections sometimes feel tenuous. Like I have to go back through and try to find, it's not obvious, which maybe that's okay. Maybe that's, there was a reason for that, and maybe it deserved more of my time to figure that out. That being said, there are some other anecdotes that I did find more interesting. At one point he goes to LA and he goes to a club with some of the other people working on the campaign, some of the young people, and like it's interesting to see inside the campaign that even in the most hopeful, exciting, promising political endeavors that we have seen in a long time, people are still just people. Like they might very much believe in their cause, but people are still just people. They're hooking up, they're doing drugs, they're having fun, It's not just a bunch of purists, which I actually appreciate. The event in LA stands out to me because he is given the chance to meet this pastor who I think he had been famous on television as David had been growing up. So David was familiar with him. That he knew about this pastor was that at one point he had kind of publicly distanced himself from politics because his spiritual belief was that what mattered is the kingdom of God lays beyond this small realm of human affairs, and that includes politics. And so David approaches him and says, like, I know your stance on this, like, you don't get involved in politics. And that's something David kind of at times expresses himself, that he at one point he's praying in a church to God, and he's just feeling like this disgust with politics and everyday things, and yet he's involved in this campaign, so he's kind of at war with himself, maybe, or just feeling this dissonance. But anyway, he approaches this pastor, and the pastor, his response to David is like, his mind about this candidate in particular is that it's a move of God. And I think that's something David sort of feels himself too, and that's where some of the dissonance comes in. Like, part of him feels like politics isn't that important compared to like eternal matters, and part of him feels swept up in this historic and humanly important event. And as far as David's character arc goes, these feelings, I was kind of wondering, like, do they get resolved? Do they intensify? But something happens near the end of the campaign. First of all, throughout the whole book, he has these phone calls with the woman who originally got him involved in the campaign. Her name's Beverly. And they just seem to love talking to each other. Like, they kind of feel a connection. And at some point, they do start seeing each other romantically or sexually. But near the very end of the campaign, David finds out that there has been some significant, campaign finance fraud going on, and that she might be involved. And he's worried about being incriminated, and so he kind of cuts off his relationship with her, and he mentions at one point feeling like he had been deceived. Like, if he gets pulled into this controversy, he could be in big trouble, and he's been seeing the woman and caring about the woman who might have had something to do with it. And, I mentioned purist politics earlier. That it's, I don't want to say this to like excuse something like major campaign finance fraud, but I just like that I think it's important that it's put into perspective that, like I said earlier, no matter how morally righteous or good your cause might be, if it's big enough, it's still human, and people make mistakes, or maybe not even mistakes. People purposely commit morally shady actions, and like I said, that's not an excuse, but it's just, politics is messy. That's my point, politics is messy, and like David, I don't always know what to do with that. There's certain things that I'm like, that definitely crosses the line, and then it's like, but if we're waiting for the perfect person or movement or organization to come along, good luck. It's just complicated. And at the end of the day, that's me. I enjoy the complications. I enjoy not always having a sense of resolution or having things tied up in a tidy bow. David's arc, that there is no like reconciliation between him and his misgivings about the candidate. I mean, he continues to not make disparaging remarks about the candidate, but just, he makes comments like, the candidate seems like someone who has their feet on the ground and is kind of trying to relate to the everyman, and at the same time, he's really a person who wants to be above the everyman, and yet the display of being grounded is essential for his politics. The interesting conclusion that, and I love this more and more that I think about it, the interesting conclusion that David, and I guess Vincent Cunningham comes to. On the last page, it's election night. The announcement has just been made that their candidate has won, and David has strong feelings about them, and yet he explicitly says he says he has a sob. He hears the news, a sob rose in my chest and receded before it could culminate. So he's still feeling these conflicting emotions, or maybe he's distrustful of his own intense emotions that he and everybody else is feeling on this historic occasion. But the transformation, the minor transformation that we only begin to see on the last page, is that he's watching the candidate make his victory speech, I guess, and he's thinking about how this man cast this shadow, and that he's, to a certain extent, a symbolic figure, and he starts thinking about his own daughter, who he's like barely mentioned throughout the book. Like, she's sprinkled here and there. And I thought we'd get more of that relationship, but we only get a real sense of him coming to terms with the fact that he's a father on this last page, because he says, I wonder too if I'd be this kind of silty half entity for my own daughter. I knew that I wanted to be more than a Rorschach, more legible than a symbol, more vivid and musical, at least to the kid, than even the most laureled statue could ever be. And the statue, or the symbol, is, it's the candidate for him. He then says, I wanted to be real in a way that history wasn't, and realized, listening to the new president, that I didn't yet know how, couldn't fathom where to begin. There's a few things there. One, again, he wants to be real to his daughter. He doesn't want to just be this, like, symbolic, out there, shadowy figure. But then also that comment about history is interesting. That history itself is, to a certain extent, not real. That's not to say it's not important or meaningful or has great repercussions, but that it is something that requires collective mythologizing, almost. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just, even in the realm of politics, it's like I said, I think in a few videos previously, it's an essential element of a campaign, of a candidate. Like, they need that symbolic value. It's just how it works, and I think the best we can do is try to work with that. Anyway, but I did find all that interesting, and my only critique is that a few sections maybe could have been omitted, or leave them in and make the book longer. I know that the author goes on to work in the White House, I believe, and I don't know, part of me is like, I appreciate that he wanted to confine his story to this first phase, I can see why this is enough of a self-contained story, but then there's part of me that's curious about, well, how you kept going, you got closer, you were working in the White House, how did your feelings change then? How are they now? Anyway, there's nothing wrong with ending a book and still wanting more, being curious, but and maybe it's just I didn't read closely enough to understand why he added what he did. Totally possible, but that's all to say that really enjoyed it, really loved his writing. Definitely going to be following Vincent Cunningham, whatever, I'm going to be paying attention, whatever he does next. And I highly recommend it. Not just for the political commentary, but just, he's a talented writer. It's a story and a person that is really worth getting inside their perspective. So, yeah, hopefully my next video won't take as long. especially because it was like 250 pages. That's not bad. And it was really fast to read. Like, I don't know if it was the font or the size of the font or what, but I kind of, when I was able to read it, I was flying through it. Yeah, thanks for watching. I really am enjoying making these videos. I have so many ideas for my future videos. I'm gonna be traveling back and forth to New York over the next few months, so it's gonna be a little unstable. Like, I want to do a what am I gonna read in June video, but like the books I have here, I don't necessarily want to carry any sort of stack with me to New York, because once I'm there I have to start getting rid of things because I am moving. I'm leaving the city for good. Yeah, that can be another vlog in itself as well, but I'll come up with something. Stay tuned. Stay cute.